Are you going to the neighborhood barbecue this Saturday? A lot of people have been talking about it all week.
I was thinking about it, but I haven't decided yet. Large gatherings aren't usually my favorite way to spend a weekend.
I understand. I'm mainly going because several new families moved into the area recently, and I'd like to get to know them better.
Why is the woman planning to attend the barbecue?
Are you still going to the gym every morning?
I try to, although it's not always easy.
I wish I had your discipline. I keep making plans to exercise regularly, but I rarely follow through.
What does the woman mean?
How are your evening classes going?
Better than expected. The workload is challenging, but the instructors are very supportive.
That's good. Not many students remain motivated when courses become demanding.
What does the man suggest?
That's a nice jacket. Is it new?
Actually, I've had it for years.
Really? It certainly doesn't look its age.
What does the woman mean?
I'm trying to decide between two apartments before the end of the week. One is close to campus, which would save me a lot of commuting time, and the other is near a shopping center with plenty of restaurants and stores nearby. Both seem like good options.
They are. I actually looked at both of them when I was apartment hunting last year. The biggest difference is the rent. The apartment near campus costs less than the one by the shopping center. Other than that, they're pretty similar.
What is true about the apartment near the shopping center?
Did you enjoy the art exhibition?
Most of it, yes.
So did I. A few pieces were difficult to understand, but that made them more interesting.
What does the woman think?
Did you watch last night's debate?
Only part of it.
You didn't miss much. The candidates spent more time criticizing each other than discussing solutions.
What does the woman imply?
How is your friend's new business doing?
Better now than at the beginning.
That's encouraging. Hardly any new company becomes profitable immediately.
What does the woman mean?
Why did that advertising campaign become so successful?
The message was simple and memorable.
Simplicity often works best.
According to the woman, why was the campaign effective?
I sometimes feel pressure to attend every social event my colleagues organize, even when I'd honestly prefer a quiet evening alone. Refusing invitations repeatedly can create the impression that you're unfriendly or uninterested.
That expectation exists in many workplaces, but constantly forcing yourself to socialize can become exhausting. Most reasonable people understand that maintaining personal boundaries doesn't mean rejecting others personally.
What point does the woman make?
The forecast says temperatures will be much higher this weekend.
I saw that.
Are you looking forward to it?
Not particularly. A warm day is nice, but once it becomes extremely hot, I'd rather stay indoors.
What does the woman mean?
What did you think of Professor Wilson's proposal? There was a lot of discussion about it at the meeting yesterday. Some people seemed unsure at first, but the more details I heard, the more reasonable it sounded.
That's exactly how I felt. I read through the entire proposal last night and compared it with the other suggestions. After doing that, I couldn't agree with you more. If you ask me, it's easily the strongest option on the table.
What does the man think about the proposal?
I felt offended when Maya canceled our dinner plans at the last minute and sent only a very brief message afterward. It made me wonder whether she actually valued the friendship as much as I did.
I understand why you reacted that way, but people sometimes disappear temporarily when they're overwhelmed. Stress or personal problems can affect communication without reflecting their true feelings toward others.
What does the man suggest?
Have you finished reading the novel for Professor Harris's class yet? A few students told me it was difficult to get through because of the writing style.
I heard the same thing before I started reading it. But after giving it a chance, I found it surprisingly interesting. It's not the easiest book I've ever read, but it's certainly no worse than the other novels we've been assigned this semester.
What does the woman think about the novel?
Since moving here, I've realized how difficult it is to meet people naturally as an adult. My routine rarely changes, and most strangers already seem absorbed in their own lives.
That's why many friendships now develop through organized activities rather than random encounters. Shared interests usually create more natural opportunities for ongoing interaction.
What solution does the man recommend?
What did you think of the new restaurant everyone has been talking about? The reviews online seem pretty mixed.
Well, the food was excellent, the service was quick, and the prices were reasonable. The experience was nothing short of amazing.
How does the man describe the restaurant?
My neighbor shares intensely personal details almost immediately after meeting someone, and she seems disappointed when others don't respond with the same level of openness right away.
People define closeness differently. Some interpret rapid self-disclosure as friendliness, while others feel more comfortable building trust gradually over time.
What causes the tension?
Was the train journey as long as you expected?
Longer, actually. There were several delays.
That's unfortunate. When I took the same route last year, the trip was so comfortable that I barely noticed how much time had passed.
What does the woman imply about her trip?
Was the orientation session useful?
I thought it would mostly repeat information from the website.
Sometimes those events aren't very informative.
Actually, hardly any of the topics had been covered online, so I learned much more than I expected.
What does the woman mean? Questions 21 through 25. You will hear two friends talking about adjusting to university life during their first year on campus.
It's hard to believe we've almost finished our first year at the university. I still remember how nervous I felt during the first week. Everything seemed unfamiliar, and I wasn't sure whether I would fit in.
I felt exactly the same. I remember getting lost several times during orientation because the campus was much larger than I expected. For the first month, I spent more time looking for classrooms than actually thinking about my courses.
My biggest challenge wasn't finding buildings, it was managing my time. In high school, teachers constantly reminded us about deadlines, but here nobody does. I quickly realized that I needed to become much more organized.
That's true. At first, I thought university would simply be a more advanced version of high school, but the level of independence surprised me. Nobody checks whether you've started an assignment until it's due.
Fortunately, I joined a study group early in the semester. That helped a lot because everyone shared advice about coursework and schedules. It also made it easier to meet people.
I wish I had done that sooner. Instead, I spent most of my first semester trying to handle everything by myself. Looking back, I probably made things more difficult than they needed to be.
At least things improved eventually. What has been your favorite part of university so far?
Honestly, meeting people from different backgrounds. Before coming here, most of my friends had similar experiences to mine. Now I regularly talk with students from different cities and even different countries.
I agree. I've learned almost as much from conversations outside class as I have from my lectures. It's interesting how many perspectives you encounter when you're surrounded by such a diverse group of people.
Definitely. The academic side is important, but I think the personal growth has been just as valuable.
Questions 26 through 30. You will hear a student and her professor discussing a research project about the effects of social media on university students.
Good afternoon, Maya. I reviewed the outline you submitted for your research project. Overall, it's a promising start, but I'd like to discuss a few areas that could be strengthened.
Thank you, Professor. I was hoping to get some feedback before I begin collecting data. Is there anything specific that needs improvement?
Your topic is interesting and relevant. However, your research question is currently too broad. You're trying to examine every aspect of social media use among university students, which would be difficult to manage within a single project.
I see what you mean. I thought a broader topic would provide more information, but now I'm realizing it could make the research less focused.
Exactly. A narrower question often leads to stronger results. For example, you might concentrate on how social media affects study habits or academic performance, rather than trying to investigate every possible effect.
That makes sense. I think focusing on study habits would be particularly interesting because many students use social media while completing assignments.
That's a good direction. Another point concerns your sample size. You mentioned interviewing only 10 students. While interviews can provide detailed information, 10 participants may not be enough to support broad conclusions.
Would it be better to combine interviews with a survey?
Yes, that's what I would recommend. A survey could help you gather information from a larger group, while interviews would allow you to explore individual experiences in more depth.
Great. I'll revise the research question and redesign the data collection plan before submitting the next version.
Excellent. Once you've made those changes, I think you'll have a much stronger project.
Questions 31 through 35. You will hear a tour guide talking to a group of visitors about a historic city center.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our walking tour of the historic city center. My name is Daniel, and I'll be your guide for the next 2 hours. Before we begin, I'd like to give you a brief overview of the area. The district we are about to explore dates back more than 300 years and contains some of the oldest buildings in the country. Although many structures have been carefully restored, you'll still notice original architectural features that have survived for generations. Our first stop will be the Town Hall, which was completed in 1724. For many years, it served as the center of local government and remains one of the most photographed landmarks in the city today. After that, we'll walk to the central square, where merchants once gathered to trade goods brought from neighboring regions. As we continue, you'll notice that several streets are unusually narrow. This design reflects the city's early history, when transportation was mainly on foot or by horse-drawn vehicles. Modern traffic would find these streets quite challenging, which is why many of them are now reserved for pedestrians. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the tour. However, I would recommend saving longer discussions for our scheduled stops so that the group can stay together. We will take a short break halfway through the tour, and there will be opportunities to purchase refreshments at several local cafes. Finally, I encourage you to look beyond the major landmarks. Some of the most interesting details can be found in small courtyards, decorative doorways, and historic signs that many visitors walk past without noticing. Now, if everyone is ready, let's begin our tour at the Town Hall just ahead of us.
Questions 36 through 40. You will hear a professor giving a lecture about the benefits of urban green spaces.
Today, we're going to discuss urban green spaces and their importance in modern cities. When people hear the term green space, they often think of large public parks. However, the term actually includes a wide variety of areas, such as community gardens, small neighborhood parks, tree-lined streets, and even green roofs on buildings. One reason urban green spaces are important is that they contribute to physical health. They provide places where people can walk, run, cycle, or participate in other forms of exercise. Research has shown that individuals who live near green spaces are often more physically active than those who do not. Green spaces can also influence mental well-being. In many cities, residents are exposed to constant noise, traffic, and crowded conditions. Spending time in natural environments can reduce stress and improve mood. Some studies even suggest that regular contact with nature may improve concentration and attention. In addition to benefiting individuals, green spaces can help the environment. Trees and plants absorb carbon dioxide, provide shade, and help reduce temperatures during hot weather. As cities continue to grow, these functions become increasingly valuable. Despite these advantages, creating and maintaining green spaces can be challenging. Urban land is often expensive, and city planners must balance many competing needs, including housing, transportation, and commercial development. As a result, decisions about green spaces sometimes involve difficult trade-offs. Nevertheless, many experts argue that investing in urban green spaces is essential because the long-term benefits often outweigh the initial costs. For this reason, cities around the world continue to explore new ways of incorporating nature into urban environments.
Questions 41 to 50. You will hear 5 different extracts. Each extract is followed by 2 questions. Extract 1. You will hear a woman talking about joining a photography club.
When I joined the photography club at the beginning of the academic year, I expected it to function much like a typical class. I imagined that we would spend most of our time listening to lectures, learning technical concepts, and practicing with cameras. In many ways, that expectation was accurate. During the first few months, we covered a wide range of topics, including composition, lighting, image editing, and portrait photography. The instructors were knowledgeable, and I learned a great deal from them. However, what surprised me most was not the educational aspect of the club. Instead, it was the sense of community that developed among the members. People were incredibly generous with their time and advice. Experienced photographers frequently helped beginners, and nobody seemed concerned about competition. We often organized weekend trips to parks, markets, and historic neighborhoods to practice our skills together. During these outings, conversations naturally extended beyond photography to travel, university life, and future career plans. As the year progressed, I realized that the club was providing benefits I had never anticipated. Not only had my photography improved significantly, but I had also formed friendships with people I probably would never have met otherwise. Looking back, I would say that the social connections have been every bit as valuable as the technical knowledge I gained.
Extract 2. You will hear a man talking about a trip he recently took.
Last year, I spent nearly 3 weeks traveling through a country I had always wanted to visit. Before leaving, I devoted a great deal of time to planning the trip. I researched famous landmarks, booked guided tours, and created a detailed schedule to ensure that I would see as many attractions as possible. At the time, I assumed that the most memorable parts of the journey would be the historic sites and well-known destinations that appeared in travel guides. Those places certainly met my expectations, but what surprised me was how much I enjoyed the unplanned moments. On several occasions, I found myself talking with local residents in cafes, bookstores, and public parks. These conversations often lasted much longer than I expected and provided insights into daily life that no guidebook could offer. I learned about local traditions, regional foods, and social customs that tourists rarely encounter. By the end of the trip, I realized that the most meaningful experiences had very little to do with the attractions I had spent months researching. Instead, they came from simple interactions with people whose perspectives were completely different from my own. Those encounters helped me understand the culture in a much deeper and more personal way.
Extract 3. You will hear part of a radio program about weather and public safety.
Meteorologists are forecasting a significantly warmer summer than average across much of the region. While many people associate warm weather with vacations, outdoor recreation, and longer daylight hours, experts caution that prolonged periods of extreme heat can create serious challenges. Health professionals are encouraging residents to take preventative measures, particularly during heat waves. One concern is dehydration, which can develop quickly when temperatures remain high for several consecutive days. Another concern involves vulnerable populations, including elderly individuals, young children, and people with certain medical conditions. Officials recommend checking on neighbors and family members who may require assistance during particularly hot periods.
Local governments have already begun preparing cooling centers where residents can seek relief if temperatures become dangerous. Utility companies are also anticipating increased demand for electricity as more households rely heavily on air conditioning. Experts emphasize that while extreme heat may not receive as much attention as severe storms, its effects can be equally significant if communities are unprepared.
Extract 4. You will hear part of a university lecture about academic success.
Many students begin university believing that academic achievement depends primarily on intelligence. Although intellectual ability certainly contributes to success, educational researchers have repeatedly found that it is only one factor among many. In fact, some studies suggest that habits and attitudes often play an equally important role. For example, students who develop effective study routines tend to perform better than those who rely entirely on natural ability. Time management is particularly important because university courses often require students to balance multiple assignments, projects, and examinations simultaneously. Persistence is another significant factor. Students inevitably encounter difficult material, and those who continue working despite setbacks generally achieve stronger long-term results. Interestingly, researchers have also found that successful students are more likely to seek assistance when necessary. Rather than viewing questions as a sign of weakness, they recognize that asking for help can improve understanding and efficiency. Ultimately, academic success appears to result from a combination of ability, effort, organization, and willingness to learn from others.
Extract 5. You will hear a man talking about learning a foreign language.
When I first started learning Spanish several years ago, I approached the process in a very traditional way. I spent countless hours studying grammar rules, memorizing vocabulary lists, and completing written exercises. Because I performed well on tests, I assumed I was making excellent progress. However, everything changed when I had an opportunity to visit a Spanish-speaking country. To my surprise, I discovered that understanding grammar and actually communicating were two very different things. Although I could recognize many words and construct sentences on paper, I struggled to follow everyday conversations. Native speakers talked more quickly than I expected, and I often became nervous when trying to respond. After returning home, I changed my approach completely. I joined conversation groups, listened to podcasts, watched interviews, and looked for every opportunity to speak the language. At first, making mistakes felt uncomfortable, but I gradually realized that mistakes were a natural part of learning. Over time, my confidence increased and communication became much easier. Looking back, I wish I had focused on practical use much earlier, rather than concentrating almost exclusively on accuracy.